You are listening to Scribble Talk, a podcast for bid and proposal professionals. My name is Baskar Sundaram, and with my co-host,
Ashley Case.
we will be sitting down with our industry veterans to share their stories, discuss their career, and learn how to make an impact in the industry.
Today's guest is Samantha Enslen. Sam runs Dragonfly Editorial, an agency that helps companies around the world write, edit, and design great content, including proposals. Sam is an APMP member and a frequent speaker at Bid and Proposal Con. She's on the board of ACES, the Society for Editing, and she's a writer for the Grammar Girl podcast. In short, she's a book lover, word nerd, and grammar geek all in one. Welcome, Sam, to Scribble Talk.
Thanks, you guys. Really appreciate it.
So Samantha, we're going to start back a little bit in the beginning. We're going to discuss where you were born, where you grew up, and where you went to school.
Sure, happy to. I can tell you I grew up and was born in Dayton, Ohio, here in the Midwest in the United States. And I went to school at the Dayton public school system. My high school was called Trotwood Madison. And I went to college here in Ohio at the College of Worcester in Northern Ohio.
Oh, very interesting. So what did you study in college?
I studied I have a good old English degree, and I also studied, had a double major in women's studies at the time.
Oh, very cool. So did that lead you to your first job? Was it using English?
Well, it was a pretty circuitous route. When I got out of college, I had a pretty random job just as an administrative assistant, research assistant for a trial lawyers association. So I learned all about how car crashes happen and all the defects in cars, and help different trial attorneys research different liability cases that they could use to help their clients. And then I left there and I worked at the DC Rape Crisis Center as their volunteer coordinator. And so I ran their hotline for a couple of years. And this was way back in the day when Marion Barry was the mayor of DC, and the city went through a whole financial crisis, and most everybody at the Rape Crisis Center was laid off. So I took a job as a barista, both at Starbucks and our local coffee shop there called Jolt and Bolt. Mm-hmm. And one of my customers ran a publishing house in the DC area. And, after a year or so of being at the coffee shop, kind of not really knowing what my future held, I talked to him one day and asked if, they might take any interns at the publishing house. So I guess he felt sorry for me. So he let me come over there in the afternoons as an intern. And one thing led to another. And that's kind of how I got started in the world of editing.
Oh, very cool. So how did you eventually get involved with proposals then?
Well, when I was at the publishing house, mostly, like I said, I think they let me work over there because they felt sorry for me. So this was also in the days before Amazon. So literally what I was doing was working in the mailroom, taking paper requests for people to send them books, packing up the books in an envelope and mailing them to people.
Wow.
Well, I think one day, one of the women was like, oh my goodness, we got to give this poor girl something somewhat interesting to do. So they asked me to proofread their winter catalog. So again, imagine a day when book publishers sent out catalogs to the public. That doesn't happen anymore.
Yeah.
Anyway, so I sat down and proofread it, and she walked in the next day and came right up to me and said, you need to be a copy editor. So that was kind of when the light bulb went on, like, oh, this is supposed to be my career. And so, I started straight away taking any classes I could about how to be an editor, buying workbooks on how to be an editor. I bought the Chicago Manual of Style and started studying it every day. And I got placed. There are a number of creative agencies in the DC area, as I'm sure there are in lots of big cities. And I got on board with some of those agencies, and they were able to start placing me at different companies around the Beltway, some of whom were doing proposals. And
okay.
I eventually got placed at Computer Sciences Corporation, CSC, in their proposal shop. And there was just a great group of people working there. I loved the environment. And I started, believe it or not, they ran proposals like around the clock a lot of the time. So I worked the night shift, the proposal night shift at
Oh
CSC.
my gosh.
I would come in the afternoon about 2:00 and work until about 10:00.
Wow.
And anyway, eventually CSC offered me a full-time position, and I was there for about 7 years. And that's really where I got a lot of my formative proposal training and really feel like where I really started to build my career.
All right. So CSC was really kind of where you got your proposal experience. When did you get involved with APMP?
Gosh, I had kind of always known that APMP existed, but I really didn't join and get active in APMP until after I started Dragonfly, which was back in 2005. I met my husband out in the DC area, and we got married and started to have kids. And at that point, I really wanted to come back to Ohio where my family lived. And God bless his soul, I was able to convince my husband, who was a very cosmopolitan dude who had lived all around the world and LA and the Philippines, to come back to Dayton, Ohio with me. And that's when I started Dragonfly. And when I left a corporate environment and came back and started working for myself, I was really conscientious of the fact, I was like, I have got to take personal responsibility for keeping current with my industry, with professional development, with my skills, or 5 years are going to pass and I'm going to be sitting here in my basement doing the same things I was doing 5 years ago, and everybody else is moving ahead. And I don't know, and I don't know what's going on.
Right.
So it was really only after I started working for myself that I joined APMP and got active in APMP and other industry groups.
Oh, very good. So you started doing some presentations and attending some proposal conferences. Can you tell us a little bit about your first experience at the APMP Bid and Proposal Con?
Oh my gosh, yeah. I was a nervous wreck because the first proposal or the first APMP conference I attended was also the first APMP event where I ever exhibited.
Okay.
So it was like one of the first times I'd ever set up an exhibit booth. I had this horrible booth that you had to put together that was really clunky. You had to put it together with like a screwdriver and a drill and
oh no.
Oh my gosh. Anyway, once I got through that and was able to attend some of the conference sessions, I really loved it. It was where was it? It was 2012, and it was the Bid and Proposal Con that was held in Dallas. I think that David Bull was the chapter or the regional leader, and he hosted that conference. I remember I saw Dick Esom speak for the first time on Microsoft Word Tricks. Alessia Smotrova-Taylor, who's an APMP fellow, spoke about writing tips, and I just was so impressed with the quality of the presentations and the quality of the learning. And Rick Harris, who of course is our executive director, and Patrice Shire, who was a staff person at that time. Another thing that really stuck out to me is they were both so welcoming of me as a new exhibitor, and so really went out of their way to let me know how much they appreciated me being there. So for somebody who was starting up with a new association, didn't know anybody, was just kind of testing the waters, the way they welcomed me made a big difference.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a really great organization, and so glad to hear such a great story about them being so welcoming and your first conference being so great. You followed on with more conference experiences, and I know you've spoken at many conferences. Do you have any memorable stories from those experiences you can share?
Gosh, I think the most memorable thing overall to me is just, again, what a great reception I feel like I've got from, members, from people who attend the sessions, are so appreciative of the material I'm able to share. Always go out of their way to say thank you, and let me know they appreciate the work I'm doing. So that means a lot to me.
Oh, absolutely. So you're also involved in some other organizations that some of listeners might not be familiar with. Can you tell us a little bit about some of those?
Yeah, one group that I have belonged to for a long time is IABC. That's the International Association of Business Communicators. I went to a conference early in my freelance career that they held that was all about writing skills. And it just blew my mind, everything that I was able to learn from them in one day, and established kind of a lot of the foundational skills that I use even today. And the other group that I'm really involved with is ACES. That's a group that used to be called the American Copy Editors Society, and we're now called the Society for Editing.
Okay.
And ACES is a group of people who are just, passionate about language, about words, about writing, and of course, about copy editing. So, anybody who who loves hashing over different points of grammar or talking about whether the serial comma is a good thing or a bad thing, ACES is the place for them. And I've been on the board for ACES I just saw LinkedIn just popped up and told me I had my 7-year anniversary being on the ACES board, which I could not believe. And I've been the vice president of the association, I think, for the past 2 or 3 years, something like that. So that, APMP and ACES, those are my two, favorite associations I belong to. And I just feel like I get so much value out of each of them.
Yeah, absolutely. Very related, but, ACES sounds a little bit more targeted to, the grammar nerds out there. And I know a few that I think maybe should look into joining that organization.
Definitely.
So moving on from kind of grammar, I noticed that you're a frequent contributor to Grammar Girl, and that's one of my favorite grammar blogs and podcasts out there. How did you begin to get involved with Grammar Girl?
Oh my gosh, that's a great question. Okay, so here's my lesson for today. Being nice to people helps. Being nice is just a good thing. And I'll tell you what happened. Grammar Girl, the person who founded Grammar Girl and Grammar Girl herself is a woman called Mignon Fogarty. Well, she was scheduled to come to one of our ACES conferences several years ago and perhaps was going to be a presenter. I don't quite remember. Anyway, she had contacted the board and let us know that she was going to have to decline attending. There was just too much going on at her business, too much hecticness and stress.
Right.
So I didn't know her from Adam. But I thought, geez, she's running her own unique small business. I'm running a small business. I'll just reach out to her and say, hey, I heard you're stressed. If you ever want to, chat with somebody else who's another business owner, talk through anything, I'd be happy to, lend a ear.
Yeah.
So she got back in touch and, said thank you, but she comes from an entrepreneurial family, has lots of, people that she can lean on and support her. But, she actually is overwhelmed with all the writing she has to do and writing different podcasts for the blog. And, she was sure that I didn't have time for such a thing as a business owner, but gee, might you have time? So I was like, all right, pause. Yes, I do. I will make time to do that. I would love to do that. So, really just reaching out a kind hand to somebody, brought something super tool in my life. That's one of my absolute favorite things I get to do in my workday, which is write blogs and podcast episodes for her.
Oh, that's so cool. What a fun way to just be involved with something that, has a lot of, fangirl followers and things like that. So over the years, I'm sure you've encountered some interesting or crazy writing, editing, or proposal efforts. Are there any that kind of stand out in your mind?
Gosh, I've worked on so many proposals over the years. I can tell you a couple non-proposal projects that stick out for me because at Dragonfly, that's my company, we kind of handle both sides of the house, you could say. We help people write and edit and design their proposals, but we also help with the marketing and sales teams. So we help people create all kinds of things like white papers, case studies, fact sheets, blog posts, social media posts. So, our writing really stretches across the whole spectrum of the sales process, I guess you could say.
Yep.
So a couple, non-proposal things that are really cool. One of our customers is called KAUST. That's King Abdullah University of Science and Technology in Saudi Arabia. And we help them same thing, write and create all different types of collateral. And I actually got to go to Saudi Arabia a few years ago and spend a week on campus there. Wow. So that was, just like a super cool life experience.
Absolutely.
And, in more recent days, just in the past few weeks, we have been helping one of our customers who, I don't know what time listeners will hear this podcast, but right now we're just right in the heart of this coronavirus pandemic. And so one of our customers wanted to put together a coronavirus resource center on their website pretty much overnight. So, they engaged us to help with that, and we were able to help them put together over the course of a couple weeks a number of different, stories, guidelines, resources for their employees and their customers to navigate the coronavirus situation. And, it had a huge impact for them in terms of web, both in terms of increased web traffic, but also feeling like they were able, doing something really active to help their customers and help their community.
Yeah, absolutely. In times like these, those resources are so invaluable.
Yeah.
So what are 3 things that not many people might know about you, Sam?
Oh my gosh. I think I'm the most boring person imaginable. I just, the only thing to know about me is I'm happiest when it's the end of the day and I've taken a shower and have on my PJs and I can just snuggle up with a cup of tea and a good book and just relax. That's about all there. That's about all as exciting or unusual as it gets with me.
Goodness. All right. So we're going to kind of delve a little bit deeper now into your entrepreneurial side. You founded Dragonfly Editorial in 2005. What was the inspiration behind the name of your company?
Oh, that's a great question. Well, really at the time, I just wanted to find something that was unique and elegant and sort of powerful. And I think the idea of Dragonfly just kind of came to me one day, but in reality, dragonflies are really cool creatures. I don't know if you know anything about them. They have pretty much their entire head is just eyes. So, they have these compound eyes. They can see in all different directions. They have those 4 wings, but each wing can operate independently. Totally cool. Obviously birds don't do that. Their wings flap in unison. So because each of their wings can operate independently, they can fly straight up, they can fly straight down, straight forward, straight backwards. And they can also hover in place like a helicopter. So, I could make a lot of cool analogies about our business with
Absolutely.
dragonflies,
Yeah.
but I wasn't that smart when I picked out the name. It just sounded cool to me.
Kind of a happy accident then, right?
Exactly.
So what do you like best and least about running your own company?
Oh, wow. That's a good question too. I think the thing I like best is being the single decision maker, or I should say the final decision maker on things. So I, always seek input from our leadership team and from my staff, but I also, enjoy knowing at the end of the day, I get to choose, which direction we're going, what I think is important for the company, and what our priorities are.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And that could be something silly like, oh, the trash can for the kitchen's not big enough. I need to buy a new trash can without having to go through some like bureaucratic, process to requisition.
Right.
We're in the process right now of instituting an entirely new project management system for our group that is really going to fundamentally change the way we work. So it's decisions from the very small to the very big. And, I guess what I dislike most about that is, the power of making those choices is also, you have the responsibility of making those choices. If I ultimately, even in consultation with others, if I pick out a project management system, drag 60 people along with me to implement this new system, institute it throughout our accounting and everything, and then it turns out to be a dud, well, that's kind of my fault. And, and I have to deal with that. So, like most things in life, there's a good side and a bad side to everything. But to me, I enjoy being my own boss and, setting the structure for my own days.
Absolutely. Sounds like the pros far outweigh any of the cons.
On a good day, I agree with you.
So how has the company evolved over the years?
Oh, yeah, it's evolved tremendously. I mean, you probably don't know this, but when I started Dragonfly, I never had any plans of having a company or a business. Wow. As I told you, when I was out in the DC area, I knew I wanted to leave CSC and come back to Ohio. So, my only plans at that point were, well, that was great having a corporate position. I learned so much. Now I'm going to go back to doing freelance writing and editing. And that was end of story.
Yeah.
So, that's what I started doing. But then pretty quickly, I started getting asked to do projects that were bigger than I could handle myself, or, just required more effort or different skills that I didn't have. And so I started pulling on a lot of the freelancers I had worked with or who had worked for me when I was at Computer Sciences Corporation, and just, adding more and more people into the fold. And then I got, let me think about this. I got pregnant again in 2009. So that was, and at that point I was like, yeah, I need a little help. So that was when we hired our first full-time employee.
Oh, wow.
And then it kind of just grew from there, and grew very slowly, very organically from there. And now it's 2020 and we have 10 full-time employees and probably, I would say, about 50 contractors who we work with on a really regular, ongoing basis.
Oh, wow. That's amazing.
Yeah. So the journey for me has been somebody who was, nothing more than a copy editor with an English degree, figuring out how to move from just being a freelance copy editor to somebody who owns and runs a business and is able to create a business structure that is sustainable and profitable over time, and that has, many pillars of strength. So we have a, editing department manager, a writing manager, a design manager, an operations manager, an accounting person, an editing manager who just handles our scientific and medical customers, one who handles just the technical editing. So the goal is to, have a business that is not dependent on Samantha Enslen, but that has, a whole cadre of smart, talented people doing the right thing and doing good work, so the business can exist independent of me. And,
wow.
and that's not easy, but that's been the journey over the past 15 years. And it's not a journey that ever exactly finishes. There's always something new to work on.
Absolutely. Yeah. What an inspirational story, Sam. Very cool how you were able to seek out a career that would better fit what you wanted for your family. And then it just evolved into this amazing company.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
So I'm sure that you have some writing resources or editing resources that are kind of your favorite go-tos for when you're like, I don't quite remember how I should handle this situation here. What are those resources that you keep handy on your desk?
Sure. Well, my two go-tos are, I have the Chicago Manual of Style online and the AP Style Book online. I have hard copies too, but I love just being able to have those in my browser bar and look up anything I want anytime. For me, it's easier to look them up online rather than to flip through the, hard copy.
Right, absolutely.
I also have a resource that I love called Garner's Modern American English. And that's I think there might actually be an app for that, oddly, but that I usually just use the hardback, and that helps me look out when I don't understand the distinction between two similar words, for example, or you're like, what's the difference between ensure, usher, insure, things like that.
Yeah,
it's a little bit different than a dictionary, which gives the meaning of words. This explains how to use certain words and which words are correct words in different situations.
It sounds like a resource a lot of people I know need. So you talked about early on when you entered the editing world that you went and you sought out some resources to really hone and improve your writing and editing skills. Are there any resources you recommend for improving writing and writing and editing skills if people are looking to hone those skills?
Sure. Well, as I mentioned, the association I belong to, ACES, the Society for Editing, they have webinars online that are great. There's a group called the Editorial Freelancers Association that has online webinars. Of course, in the proposal world, ACES, APMP members, we can access our monthly webinars. I've taken webinars from Shipley specifically on proposal writing, which I think are really great. And, just for pure learning the craft of copy editing, I think the best resource it's like going truly old school and sitting down with a paper workbook and working through a workbook. There's a great one that's called the Copy Editor's Handbook, and its sister companion, the Copy Editor's Workbook. And so there's nothing more humbling than doing, working through a copy editing exercise and then going to the back of the book and looking at the answer key and seeing how you did.
Right.
And more importantly, seeing all the things you missed. It really is an eye-opener about how careful and meticulously you have to look through a text to find all of the errors. It's not the same as reading. You know, we get people all the time who are like, oh, I love books, I love reading, I think I'd be a great copy editor. It's not the same thing. It's a totally different, that may mean, if you love books and you love reading, that could mean that editing would be a fun career for you.
Right.
But it doesn't necessarily mean that off the shelf, you are going to have the skill set required for that. It's a very specific skill set, and you really do need to do very conscientious, deliberate learning to master that skill set. And workbooks, like I was saying, that's a super cheap and easy way to learn. You can just, there's another one called, I think, the Perfect Grammar Workbook. That you can order.
Yeah,
Anyway,
they sound like great resources. You know, I was scarred pretty heavily by my technical editing class in college. So doing it on my own without a professor judging me might be a better way.
Definitely.
So you mentioned serial commas earlier. Are you a fan of the serial comma, or are you more on the other side of the fence?
Oh my gosh, people love to debate this all day long. I'll tell you the truth, I could not care less. You tell me my job as an editor, you tell me what style you want to follow, that's the style that I implement. If you pressed me for an answer, I would say that in certain cases, or perhaps in many cases, comprehension and readability is facilitated by that extra comma that is in sentences, in other words, the Oxford comma. But you know, do I really care one way or the other? No.
Yeah, you're one of the few that doesn't feel strongly, right? People either really love it or really hate it in most cases. So. Glad you have that flexibility.
Yeah.
Do you have any other, or obviously the serial comma isn't one of your grammar pet peeves, but do you have any pet peeves when it comes to grammar?
You know, I don't have pet peeves. I don't get worked up about grammar errors the way some people do. You know, I love copy editing. I love finding and fixing mistakes. To me, it's just a big treasure hunt. It's like a big seek and find game. And so, you know, I enjoy, it's, you know, the more grammar errors, the better, bring them on. And I really do feel that, you know, the job of the copy editor is to help help writers uncover their genius, to get rid of the errors and typos and kind of awkward sentences or, you know, gaps in logic that are going to stop their readers from being able to see their genius, you know, to see their brilliant ideas. You know, so that's my job as a copy editor. So the more problems I can find in somebody's grammar or wording or the logical flow of their text, the better, because I'm just stripping away the barriers that are going to help everybody see. Oh my gosh, I can't talk anymore. I'm stripping away the barriers that are going to stop people from seeing, you know, how awesome the author is.
Right. Yeah. You're just helping the author to show their message and make it clearer for the audience. Absolutely.
Yeah.
So you're involved with this really cool sort of thing. I'm not going to say it correctly, I'm sure. Pecha-Kucha?
Yes. Pecha-Kucha, it's pronounced, technically they tell me it's pronounced Pachakacha, and that means chit-chat in Japanese.
Okay.
It's a really neat organization that I found out about several years ago, and Dragonfly has been sponsoring the Dayton chapter of Pachakacha for the past several years. And Pachakacha is basically a forum for people to get together and share their ideas. It started in Japan several years ago when a group of architects wanted to get together and share with each other the different projects they were working on. But they're like, oh my God, this is going to be so boring if everybody just puts slides up of what they're working on and, you know, drones on forever. So they came up with this concept that's at the heart of Pachakacha. It's each speaker gets 20 slides, 20 seconds each, end of story. So that means that each presentation, and the slides are on a timer. The slides run on a timer. So they switch ahead every 20 seconds, like it or not. So that means that each speaker, it gets about 6 minutes to talk. It creates a really engaging environment. And, even if the topic's not that great and the speaker isn't, a super professional, how bad can anything be for 6 minutes? So Pachakacha, they're really community-based events. Here in Dayton, we've had people literally show slides from their vacation. We've had people talk about some of the hidden architectural gems in Dayton. We had somebody give us a kind of an insider's tour of the Dayton Art Institute. Their story of creating a community garden in Dayton. I've spoken a couple different times, and most recently I talked about my Barbie collection from when I was a little girl and showed photos of all of my Barbies. So it's really a great community event, a way to get people together and just give people a forum for talking about stuff going on in their lives that they wouldn't have a chance to otherwise.
Yeah, no, they sound so intriguing. And as you described them, it sounded a lot like the Ignite talks that APMP used to do.
Yes.
And they've gone away from that, but it sounds similar. So, sounds like a very exciting thing to be a part of and to sponsor as an organization.
Yeah, and you're right. They are very similar to the Ignite concept.
Yeah. Okay, so this is the last one before Baskar is going to mix things up with our surprise rapid fire questions round.
Yeah.
So I think we're a little curious to hear a little bit about your crush on Brian Garner.
Of course. Brian Garner is the author of the book I mentioned before, Garner's Modern American English. He is the author of a book called the Harvard Business Review Guide to Better Business Writing. He's also a lawyer and has written a number of books on plain English and clear writing in legal settings. So he's just a very clear, he's a proponent of plain English and plain speaking in business communications. I really recommend that HBR book I mentioned, Better Business Writing. Yeah. Reading the book itself is an exercise in plain English and clear writing. So I just think there's a lot that proposal writers, business communicators can learn from his work.
Absolutely. Sounds like a great author and a couple great reads that we should check out if we haven't already.
Yeah.
Right, Sam, I think I'm going to edit out the part when you said I'm boring.
You're too kind. You're too kind.
No. Believe me, I think we don't normally do this kind of mix-up in our thing, but in your case, we did because there is English. Normally, Sam, in our surprise rapid-fire questions, we normally jump into some questions, but in your case, I thought we'll start with some of the publications that you did for, say, the Editorial Eye or the Grammar Girl.
Sure.
Because every single word there was a surprise for me. I didn't know. If I just read the title, I'd be like, what is this? Let's just start with you, and then maybe you could give a kind of little feel for what they are.
Okay.
What is a battle royal?
Okay. All right. Okay, I see what you're after. You're going to ask me about some of the posts I've written for Grammar Girl. Okay. What is a battle royal, also known as a battle royale? That is basically like a scrum or a melee. It's literally a battle between more than one person. That phrase has come into prominence recently because of the game Fortnite, which you can play it in a couple different modes. I think one is Save the World and the other one is Fortnite Battle Royale. But the term has a long history and kind of an ugly history. For example, there was, when we think of people boxing right now, we think of two guys or two women in a ring. But there used to be boxing matches where they would just put a bunch of different men in a ring together and let them beat each other up until there was only one man standing. Same thing with, cockfighting, which is illegal in most places. They would put more than one chicken in a ring with really sharp, barbed spurs attached to their feet and basically let them tear each other apart until, one was left standing. That's a battle royale.
That's good. Thank you. I think we do that all the time at home. So I will call whatever we are going to do from today, it's called Battle Royale,
Okay. Perfect.
So what does dilly dilly mean?
Dilly dilly. Okay, so if you watch TV, at least in the US, you probably see these Bud Light commercials. They often have them during football, where there's this like pretend king and he's like, dilly dilly. And that's him, calling his servants to bring him his Bud Light. Dilly dilly isn't really a real phrase. Anheuser-Busch literally just invented it for that ad campaign. There is a word called dilly, which I learned when I researched this piece, that used to mean a horse. It was an old-fashioned word for a horse-drawn carriage. So if you think like ladies in the time of Pride and Prejudice, pulling up to a ball and stepping out of their carriage, that would be called a dilly. I also learned when I was researching this that dilly dilly, putting two words together, is an example of a literary device called I'm probably not going to pronounce this right. It's epizeuxis. And it's when you put two words together back to back for emphasis, like in Heart of Darkness, the main guy, he's like the horror, that's epizeuxis. Or there's that Maroon 5 song that's like, I don't want to know who's taking you home, and loving you more, or whatever. Like that repetition of the same word over and over, that's epizeuxis.
Maybe you should keep singing.
Definitely not. Definitely not. The last time I tried to do karaoke, I could see my husband across the room and he was just doing that like, or you put your hand across your throat motion, like, no. So.
I mean, I don't know what you read, Sam, but I think if I scratch 1% of what you read, I'll be better in what I'm doing. But that's
So, Sam, I thought that was a reference to the nursery rhyme, lavender blue dilly dilly.
Well, that is something else that kind of came up when I researched that. And there is a nursery rhyme that has dilly dilly in it. My guess is that the ad executives at Anheuser-Busch weren't thinking of the nursery rhyme when they invented this ad campaign. They probably were just trying to think of something that sounded kind of fun and silly.
Okay. Yeah. So that's what I haven't seen the ads. And so when this question came up in our podcast, I was like, oh, I bet that's what it is. And I was totally surprised that it was just kind of made up.
I'm glad I'm not the only one surprised. I'm pretty much surprised what we are talking. The whole episode here is a big surprise for me. Let's just go. Let's just continue. Is it jury rigged or jerry rigged?
Oh my gosh, that is a good question. Okay, so jury rigged means something that is kind of put together on the fly. as opposed to, if your car broke down and the bumper fell off and you needed to keep driving, or we should say, let's say your muffler fell down and it was dragging on the ground, and you had to fix it so you could keep driving, but you took, say, like a coat hanger, and were able to wrap the coat hanger around the muffler and attach it to your bumper just long enough so you could drive to a service station, that you would be a jury-rigged that. And the word is Jury, not jerry-rigged, like the name Jerry. And that comes from, in the olden times of sailing, if a mast, the tall thing on a ship off which you hang the sails, if the mast got broken and they had to kind of put up a temporary mast just with wood, random pieces of wood they happened to have on the ship, that was called a jury mast. And therefore the term jury rigged grew from there.
What is a tall poppy syndrome, and can I catch it?
So this is why I love writing for Grammar Girl. I get to just in my day-to-day life, you see something, tall poppy syndrome, and you're like, what is that? And well, guess what? Part of my job is I get to research that and find out and write about it. So tall poppy syndrome is I think it's a slang term that's pretty much limited to Australia, I believe. And it has to do with the phenomenon of so think about a field of poppies, and one that just happens to be taller than all the other ones, and it's sticking up, and you just take your garden shears and chop it right off. So it's all the poppies are at the same height. So it relates to the phenomenon, if there's one person who's kind of like, standing out and doing something special, or maybe something a little offbeat, you're like tamping them down, like being like, no, you just stay with the herd. Don't stick your head out. Don't do anything special. That phenomenon of kind of tamping down somebody who's exceptional is called tall poppy syndrome.
Wow, which is very common these days, isn't it?
It can be. Yeah.
Oh my God. Yes. So, okay. Thank you, Sam. So what does fast and loose mean?
Fast and loose. So you hear that most often in the phrase where somebody's playing fast and loose with the truth. And basically what that means is they're kind of not exactly telling the truth. They might be telling sort of a version of the truth, but maybe you're not really getting the whole story. And that comes, the origin of that phrase, it comes from a game that used to be played in England where somebody would, it's really hard to describe without seeing it, but basically somebody would take a belt and then they would give you a stick and they would throw the belt up and say, okay, all you have to do to win the game is catch this belt with your stick. Seems easy enough, but they had a way of manipulating the belt in such a way that you could never hold it fast. You could never get it fast. You could never catch it. And that's because they made the belt too loose. So therefore, from that trickster game, sideshow game, the term fast and loose was developed. Basically, as somebody who's trying to pull something over on you.
Cool, Sam. Yes, last one, Sam, before we go to the real surprise round.
Okay, boy. All right. I'm ready.
What's the meaning of dark horse?
Dark horse. So dark horse is, that's an expression referring to somebody who usually like a politician or somebody in a competition who kind of nobody knows, doesn't know anything about, and then all of a sudden they come from behind and they seem like a real contender to win the competition or win the election. And that term grew out of horse racing. And really, it's just a connotation with darkness being sort of that it's relation to things being shadowy or unknown. So, so a dark horse would be a horse that nobody knew anything about. They, weren't expected to win the race, but, gosh darn it, they surged from behind, and they do.
Perfect, Sam. I think while you are talking about politicians, it just reminds me the one word that I picked up from them, which is the alternate facts.
Yes. Well, I think politicians of all stripes are definitely in that playing fast and loose with the truth category.
Exactly. I'm assuming, there should be a passion behind all this. So what is your favorite childhood book?
Good question. Let's see, as a true child, my granny gave me a Reader's Digest book called 70 Favorite Stories for Young Readers. And I read the heck out of that book. I just remember reading those stories over and over. And then as I got a little bit older, I had a collection, the collected short stories of Ray Bradbury. That's a big book. It's like 600 pages. I read the heck out of that. I must have read that and reread that many times. Of course, I read, of course, all the Dune books, Dune Messiah, Children of Dune, The Hobbit, Lord of the Rings. Those are some of the ones that stick out to me from my childhood and high school days.
Wow, I was reading comic books.
I can't, that's a funny thing. I can't read, I appreciate the concept of comic books, but I get a headache when I read them. I think my eyes, I can't jump from pain to pain in the comics. It, kind of gives me a headache.
Interesting, Sam. So if you didn't write or edit as you currently do, Sam, what would you do for work?
Well, geez, I'd have no problem being a stay-at-home mom. I would love to just chill around the house and do laundry and, make lunch for my kids in the afternoon. I think I'd love to be a pro tennis player. Not that I have the skills to do that. But I play tennis competitively at a local level, and if that's all I could do all the time is just train and work out and take tennis lessons, and that would be awesome. Or I might just go back to being a barista. I actually loved being a barista. I love serving people, waiting on people, making them happy. Making recognizing when you have customers coming in the door, making their drink for them before they've even ordered it, just putting a smile on people's faces. That makes me happy.
Yes, Sam, I think I was just quickly checking, Sam. I think you look very similar to Steffi Graf, don't you?
Well, that's a big compliment. Thank you very much.
Maybe you should try pro tennis. There might be. Yes, let's move. Sam, I think in our generation, Sam, I think because we use mostly computers to write, and kids, they're all over PCs and tablets.
Yeah.
These days, I see, what writing is kind of cleansing for me. Do you do writing as a kind of spiritual practice as well?
Oh, no. I mean, for me personally, writing is one of the hardest things I do. It's I do consider it work. For me personally, I don't consider myself like a natural writer. My husband, for example, is a fiction writer. He writes a series of books. Well, he has a bunch of books, but most recently he's been working on a series of, they're called the Frank Harper Mysteries, and they're set in a fictional small town, very much like the one that we live in. Greg is a natural writer. He's compelled to write. He's driven to write. He gets antsy if he can't find time to write. He has too many story ideas coming in his head than he would ever have time to write, even if he had all the time in the world. Myself, for me, it's not something I'm compelled to do. It's something I do for work. And for me, I consider it very difficult work. I think that, I feel writing, it's very deep work it's very difficult to make your understanding of a topic concrete. That's what I think writing is all about. And what's can be deeply uncomfortable for me about that is that I think it's only through the process of writing that you discover your understanding of a topic. Mm-hmm. So when you're starting to write a piece, whether it's a proposal section or whether it's a Grammar Girl post, I don't know ahead of time exactly what I want to say. It's only through that process of forcing myself to start the writing that I discover my full understanding of the topic, that I discover how I truly feel about it. So I feel like at the beginning of the process, there's a lot of discomfort and anxiety because you don't know how it's going to turn out. You don't know if you're going to be able to do it right. You don't know if you're going to be able to express what you want to express. So I feel like for me, I have to be able to tolerate that period of discomfort, that period of anxiety, and and have the faith that it's only through going through that process of writing that it's going to relieve that tension, bring me a sense of peace, and help me discover what it was I was trying to say or what I needed to say. So, maybe as you said, that is a spiritual practice of sorts. But it's also just what I do every day as my job.
Yes, Sam, I can imagine, because for me, I don't write that much. So when I write, I need to reflect a little bit more. But in your case, it's a balance there. That's good, Sam. So what's your favorite underappreciated novel?
Well, there's a series of novels that I think is underappreciated. It's the Master and Commander series written by Patrick O'Brien, an Irish author. I don't know if you're familiar with those. There's, I think, 20 novels in the series. They're set in the Napoleonic War period. And I think that O'Brien is just a brilliant writer. The books are so dense with information about the time, with the details of seafaring vessels of that time, and with really rich and subtle character development. I honestly think this guy is on par with your Jane Austen. But you know what? He's a genre writer, and traditionally genre writers, whether it's seafaring tales or horror or science fiction, don't get the same introduction to the canon that quote straight literature does. So that's one that that's an author in a series of books that I would say is probably underappreciated.
Thank you, Sam. I'll explore that. Sam, what's your favorite quote?
Favorite quote, maybe Lori Hernandez Olympics, where she's just standing up there getting ready to start her floor routine, and you can just see her lips move, and she just says, "I got this."
Oh, wow.
So that I feel like that's what I have to say to myself on a lot of days to just, coach myself through starting to write a difficult piece or, diving into a difficult task at work. You got this.
Definitely, Sam, you got this. So what's your favorite love story, a movie or a book?
Favorite love story?
Uh-huh.
I would have to go with the classics, Pride and Prejudice and Sense and Sensibility.
Okay. Any particular reason, Sam?
I think that there's something about those two books that I can read over and over, and each time I read them, I discover something new in the books, or I see them in a different way based on the lens of where I am in my life at that time. So they just never get old. Oh, Jane Eyre, of course. Jane Eyre is probably my top love story and also just book of all time. I hope I never get tired of reading that one over and over. I haven't so far.
That's good, Sam. So what is the first book, or what's the book that made you cry?
Oh yeah, okay. Shoot, what is it called? Philip Pullman, The Compass. Is that what those books are called? The Golden Compass. Okay. I think it was in the second book of that series. I won't, without giving anything away, I'm just going to say a certain character dies. And I remember sitting on the couch in my living room and just like tears running down my face, reading that. That may have been one of the only books that ever made me cry.
Interesting. Okay, Sam.
Yeah.
I should have asked this as a follow-up to the previous question, but let me ask you: does Prince Charming exist, Sam?
Oh my goodness. I don't think Prince Charming exists. I don't think Princess Charming exists. It's funny that you ask that. I was just giving my daughter a lecture in the car yesterday about how when you get married to somebody, you can never expect your spouse to be the be all and end all for you. There's some things that you will be able to talk with them about. There's some things you're really going to want to talk with other people about. You can't expect them to like all the same activities you do, or want to do all the same things that you do. And in fact, if you expect that from your romantic partner, you're going to be disappointed, and you're setting them up for failure. So my daughter's like 14 years old. And we were talking about this when we were in the drive-through of the Dairy Queen. I have no idea how it came up, but apparently I was like, good time to give my daughter a lesson on, how to have a successful marriage.
That's good one, Sam. So if you were to be on a reality TV show, which one would you be on and why?
Oh, see, I don't watch reality TV, so that's a difficult one. I guess I would be on Survivor or The Amazing Race, because at least seems like you get to do a lot of cool physical stuff. And The Amazing Race, you get to travel around the world, so that would be pretty awesome.
Perfect. Can you daydream at night?
Me personally, or are you asking philosophically?
No, you looks like you have elevated me to a different level here. Yeah, anything, Sam. I think it is for you. Maybe do you or?
Well, I'll tell you, I really try not to daydream at night, because if I start letting my mind wander at night, it always goes into rumination and worry. So when I go to sleep at night, I have two things with me, aside from my husband. I have my Kindle and I have my iPhone. So when I wake up at night and I start to, quote, daydream or start to think and worry about stuff, I just open my Kindle and start reading, or I have my iPhone and I listen to a podcast until I drift off to sleep. I do daydream, as it were, in the shower at night. I have a little bit different schedule maybe than most people. Rather than taking a shower in the morning or whatever, I usually take a shower as soon as I get home from work. I literally want to wash all the cares of the day away from me, clean up and put on my relaxing clothes. And that's kind of a time when I'm decompressing in the shower, when I do find that a lot of great ideas or thoughts come to me. Maybe I was blocked on something at work I couldn't quite figure out, or I wasn't sure how to write, start writing a piece. And then all of a sudden those ideas will start coming to me while I'm in the shower. So I think there's something with that concept of like physically relaxing, letting down your hair that lets some of those ideas that are perhaps hidden underneath your stress, they have the freedom to start bubbling up.
Yes, Sam. So true. Sam, do you think we have multiple personalities? If so, do you have?
I think that I have multiple personalities, and it's really frustrating because sometimes when I go to a party or say an APMP conference, I'll feel really comfortable and talkative and happy chatting with people. And say the next day I go to a social event or the next day at the conference, and it's like, well, awkward Sam came that day instead of comfortable Sam. And I feel, self-conscious and stupid, like, I don't know what to say. I don't have anything intelligent to talk about. And I feel like I can't really control which Sam shows up at any given time. Is it going to be the confident professional Sam, or is it going to be like the awkward 14-year-old Sam who shows up that day? But that's okay. We're trying to bring the 14-year-old Sam along and help her feel more confident too.
Yes, I think that's normal, Sam. I think we all are not always 24/7 on the same zone or on the same personality.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's it. So what comes first, Sam, chicken or egg?
It's so funny that you asked that, because my kids, even when they were really little, like have talked about that question in a serious way. Oh. Like this is a life conundrum, which it doesn't make any sense. How could one come without the other? So I don't have an answer for you, but it's a good topic for debate, right up with why are we here and, what's the meaning of our existence?
Yes, Sam, that's a tough one. Sam, do you watch Star Trek or Star Wars?
Yes, both.
Okay, so if you were a Star Wars character, which one would you choose?
If I were a Star Wars character, I guess I'd have to go with Rey from the, most current TV programs, or the most current series of movies that have been out. She's pretty tough, pretty spirited. She can take care of herself.
That's nice. Good. Mm-hmm. At the beach, would you rather play in the sand or play in the water?
At the beach, I would rather play in the water, though I'm like 4 feet is my limit because I do not want to get out there with the sharks.
Nice one, Sam. Last two. Do you think people should eat the fish they catch or just let them go?
Well, if you're going to all the trouble to catch the fish, you should definitely eat it. Now, of course, you, I suppose, could also just catch them for sport and throw them back, or perhaps if it's a baby, you want to throw those back. But hey, if you catch a fish and eat it, I completely support you.
Thank you, Sam. So the last one, Sam, before we wind up this one. So if parents say never take candies from strangers, then why do you think we celebrate Halloween?
Oh my gosh, this is another one like the chicken and egg question. You're asking me something that has no answer.
Okay.
I literally have no answer for you for this one. That's a good question.
Thank you. So we finished our surprise random questions round, Sam. So who was always there for you in both life and career, and how do you feel about that?
Sure. Well, needless to say, my parents were always there for me and still are always there for me. My parents are pretty, they're kind of like your stiff upper lip English type where they don't, show a lot of emotion, but nonetheless, that if you needed anything, you could go to them at the drop of a hat and they would be there for you. I always also appreciate the fact that my parents, a lot during childhood, and once I, got to be a teenager and a young adult, never gave me any advice on anything. They would help me talk through a problem, but they really wanted me to make my own decisions and chart my own path. And I think that's just something that I always appreciated about them. And I would have to say my husband is a huge support too. Like I talked about when I was thinking about leaving the DC area and wanting to come back to Ohio, for somebody who's lived in big cities all around the world, coming back to live in little old Dayton, Ohio is not super exciting. It's one thing if you grew up here, like I did, it's different for somebody else. But he was really supportive of that decision and supportive of us being close to some family because he didn't have family in the DC area either at that time. And, moreover, my big idea of moving our entire family back from DC to Dayton was, let's go back there and you can be a stay-at-home dad and I'll support our entire family by being a freelance editor. Which in retrospect is like a really ridiculous, risky concept. But, he was right there with me and was, game for doing that. And, gosh darn it, we made it happen. So I have to give him a big shout out for his support for sure.
That's nice, Sam. That's nice. So looking back at the career, other than the person who gave you the opportunity to do the internships, Sam, is there anybody else who you want to give shout out as well?
I mean, yeah, I would definitely give a shout out to my first boss at CSC, Pat Marzola, who, I was a pretty flaky kid at the time when she hired me. I think like I didn't shave my legs, my head was shaved, my I did not shave my legs, but my head was shaved. I had horrible fashion, really not suited for a professional environment. But she, I guess, saw something in me where she thought there was potential and was willing to hire me into that corporate environment and let me kind of come into my own professionally there. So, I, again, have to give a big shout out for her for trusting this person who might not have looked on the surface like they were ready for prime time, but giving me a chance.
Nice, Sam. That's perfect. So you have been having a good, successful career, Sam, and that you started from being nice, as you always said, and that's what's the grounding principle that has kept you going. What advice would you give someone wanting to pursue a career similar to yours?
In terms of a career similar to mine, in terms of writing and editing, like I said earlier, study, get those workbooks, take those classes, practice, and also commit yourself to continuing education. I got no truck with anybody who thinks like, yeah, I've already learned everything there is to know. I don't need to take any more classes. I've been an editor for however long it's been now, 20 years. And I just took a webinar recently on proofreading 101, because I'm like, well, maybe there's something new that people are doing now I don't know about, or maybe there's some tip that this instructor has that can teach me to do something in a better way than I ever have before. And, in general, just follow what's interesting to you and fun to you. Like I said before, I had a really circuitous path before I came upon editing, but I just kind of kept doing the next thing that seemed the most interesting to me. And, here's where I wound up.
That's beautifully said, Sam. So, and looking back, Sam, I know you started Dragonfly in 2005, Sam. Is in the past 5 years, is there any choices that you have made that you're thanking yourself for making those?
I can't say any one choice, but definitely anytime I choose to spend time with my kids and my husband and my family, rather than prioritizing work, I think that's always been a good choice. Work has a place. There's urgent needs there, but I think it's easy to shortchange your family sometimes because they don't have deadlines. They don't have meetings that you have to go to. And so sometimes you can let the things in your work world that have schedules and deadlines take priority over those things that don't. So anytime I'm able to make choices that do prioritize my family, I think looking back, that's something I'm thankful for.
Ah, that's nice, Sam. So that's me done. Thank you, Sam.
So looking back, you were from the Dayton area and you went to school in Ohio. What originally took you to the DC area?
I guess I was one of those, how there's all those rock and roll songs about gotta get out of the small town, get to the big city. I guess that's pretty much was my main motivation, coming from a fairly, small community, just outside of Dayton. I just felt like, I want to go experience the big wide world. And so my motivation was nothing more nor less than that.
Oh, gotcha. Yeah. So is there anything that you miss from the DC area that you don't really get to experience in Dayton?
Really just all the restaurants and all the different types of food. But, I get that. I do travel for work some. Our APMP conferences are always in different locations. And so whenever I travel, I try to go out and try new restaurants and try new foods whenever I can.
Oh, yeah, that's amazing. I love traveling, and in Nashville, you can get some really good food, but there's some foods you just can't get. And that's the biggest thing I miss as well from the DC area.
For sure.
So looking back, are there accomplishments that you're most proud of? I know you have so many to choose from.
Yeah, I mean, if I look at my life as a whole, I would say the thing I'm most proud of is my children and, the children that my husband and I have raised together, because they're all, kind and thoughtful and caring. And oh my gosh, I'm going to start crying talking about it. But, they're genuinely good people. And, simply that they're thoughtful. You can tell they care about each other. They care about other people. And, so creating other good people in the world to help our world, what else is better than that?
Yeah, absolutely. That's amazing. And they're just going to go on to be great people and influence the world. And you were an amazing part of that. So
thank you.
All right, Sam. So our last one for you is, what is something that you're looking forward to in the future?
Oh, wow. Well, again, I don't know when people are listening to this, but while we're recording it, we're right in the middle of the coronavirus shutdown where, we're asked to not leave our house if we don't absolutely have to. All the restaurants are closed, all the gyms are closed, all sporting events are closed. So, I think everybody feels this way. It's given us so much more of an appreciation for the little things we used to do. So, right now, what I'm looking forward to is just like hoping that the pool opens this summer and I can go to the pool after work with my kids. I want to go, I can't wait to go back to my gym and work out with all the people that I work out there. And, going with my family and my parents and my sister and her family, going out for a big lavish dinner and, having appetizers and drinks and just enjoying, being out in the world and being with each other. So right now at this minute in time, that's what I'm looking forward to.
Absolutely. And I think so many of us can relate to that. And it's those little things that we'll really appreciate, once this is all over. So it's amazing. Thank you, Sam.
For sure.
Sam, is there any part of your life or career that we haven't touched, Sam?
I think we've gone over, pretty comprehensive role.
Oh. Really helpful, Sam. Sam, thank you so much for your time that on a very short notice. It's been a real privilege to have you with us at Scribble Talk. Wish you all the good health, happiness, and please continue to inspire bid and proposal industry colleagues or everybody around you, as you always do, editors and others. So stay healthy, stay happy, stay strong, and stay safe. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Baskar. Thank you, Ashley.
To our listeners, thank you so much for tuning in. Please visit batchyscribble.com/podcast to listen to this episode and check out any of our other previously recorded episodes. If you've enjoyed today's interview, don't forget to subscribe, review, and share the Scribble Talk podcast. We hope you'll check out our next episode where we interview another industry expert and special guest. Until then, it's Ashley Kays,
Baskar Sundaram,
signing off.